Well, welcome everybody who decided to join us. We're going to talk about penalty enforcement tonight. I thought this was important to revisit, not just because we've been doing a lot of quizzes lately, but I suspect most of us have to take clinic quizzes here in the next couple of weeks. Plus, we got the CFO test, which is supposed to launch tomorrow. We'll talk about us getting together for that here at the end of this. But I did want to go through and kind of rehash some basics about penalty enforcement, get a little deeper on some other topics, just to put everybody in the same mindset as we go forward. Just be thinking about penalty enforcement because those are generally the questions we're going to get on tests anyway. With that in mind, if there are questions as we go or something you want to say, don't hesitate to say, hey, I got something, and ask a question, and we'll go from there. So what am I talking about tonight? We'll revisit the basics, talk about the basic principles. In addition to that, we'll talk about some other commonly called fouls that might have some special enforcements, talk about tries and extra periods, illegal touching of kicks and how that impacts enforcement. We'll deal with our fouls that impact timing, like fouls in the last 2 minutes and 10 seconds distraction stuff. Some other unusual things, then briefly discuss mechanics around penalty enforcement, take questions, and call tonight. So hopefully that sounds reasonable for everybody. With that in mind, we'll jump right into the basic principles. The dead ball and the interval foul stuff, we know that if it's a dead ball foul, we're going to administer that separately in the order of occurrence, unless we've got dead ball UNS or personal fouls by both teams that are reported to the referee and none of the penalties have been completed, they'll cancel. Simply put, one of those fouls against 4 of those fouls by an opponent prior to them being completed would cancel them all out. We wouldn't enforce any penalties. Any foul that occurs between the end of the 4th period and the start of the extra period, or between possession series and an extra period, or between extra periods, are always going to be enforced from the 25-yard line to start the next possession series. Regardless of anything else. The basic thing to start here with is the 4 different types of plays for penalty enforcement purposes. The first one is a forward pass play, interval between the snap and the end of the pass. Basic spot for these types of fouls is always the previous spot, except a team B personal foul, we would enforce the end of the last run, provided that run ends beyond the neutral zone and there's no change of possession during the down. As a reminder, if the ball goes through the end zone and results in a touchback after the down, that's not a change of possession during the down, and we would enforce that team B personal foul on the end from the end of the last run. Here are some examples. 2nd and 7 at 35 at the snap. B75 is flagged for defensive holding against A61 at the 36. A9's pass to 81 is either incomplete or caught by 81 at A's 40. He's tackled at the 50. The only place to enforce that, the penalty on the incomplete pass is the previous spot. So it's a 10-yard penalty, previous spot, first down. In addition, since this particular foul is not against an eligible pass receiver, then we would have to decline that penalty to keep the yardage in the second example. Sound good to everybody so far? Okay. Another example. 1st and 10 to B's 45, B92 is flagged for a face mask against A12 prior to the pass. A1's pass is caught by A81 at B's 35. There's a fumble at the 30, ball rolls to the 25, and it's recovered either by A or by B. Well, if it's recovered by A, we would have a tack on. We'd be able to enforce this penalty half the distance to the goal from the end of the last run, which is B's 25. We'd go half the distance, be 1st and 10 to the 12 and a half. But in the second example, since B recovered and there was a change of possession during the down, the only place to enforce that penalty is the previous spot. So 15 yards from there, automatic first down. Questions about forward pass plays? All right, free kick plays. Interval between the time the ball is kicked and the end of the kick. The basic spot for free kick plays is the previous spot. A foul by A, however, can be enforced at the spot where the dead ball belongs to B. So there's your basic principles here as it relates to free kick plays. Here are some examples. During the free kick, before the free kick is caught at the 5, B42 is flagged for blocking below the waist against A15 at B's 40. B9 returns the kick to the 40. Since that's a foul against B and occurred during the kick, the only place to enforce that penalty is the previous spot with a replay of the free kick down. Everybody agree with that? For free kicking after a safety, we have a flag for offside. B9 catches the kick at B15 and returns it to the 40, where either he tackles or he fumbles, and if he fumbles, it's recovered by A. We can tack that on in the first example. We would have to go from the previous spot in the second example because B is not illegal possession at the end of the down. Everybody with me there? Scrimmage kick plays, interval between the snap and when a scrimmage kick ends. The basic spot is the previous spot for non-PSK fouls, the PSK spot if it is a PSK foul, or again, foul by A can be enforced at the spot where the dead ball belongs to B. Again, some examples. 4th and 12 at A's 34 at the snap, B77 is flagged for defensive holding while attempting a pull and shoot. Kick is caught at the 5, or excuse me, the kick is caught by number 5 at the 20 and returned to the 50 before he steps out of bounds. This is not a post-scrimmage kick foul. The only place to enforce it would be the previous spot. That would make it A's ball, 4th and 2 at the 44. 4th and 7 at the 15, flag for illegal formation for having 5 in the backfield. B5 catches the kick at the 40, or B's 40 and runs to A's 45. In that case, we could tack that on. Questions about scrimmage kick plays? Okay.
Hey, Nick,
Yes.
go back to the first question and just take the word pull and shoot out, just to clarify that if it's not a pull and shoot action, we want to make that PSK.
That's correct. There's a very specific case play that I dug out the other day. It's in Rule 10. Some kind of, we at the snap, some kind of action against the snapper or a specific pull and shoot on that kind of hold. They would want that as a non-post scrimmage kick foul. But if the foul were instead just a run-of-the-mill hold, they want that as a post scrimmage kick foul. All right, running plays. Anything else is a running play. So anything that wasn't in any of our other 3 categories is going to be a running play, and each separate run segment has its own basic spot. And the basic spot for that, if the run ends beyond the neutral or behind the neutral zone, is the previous spot. But if the run ends beyond the neutral zone, it's going to be the end of that related run. So here are some examples of that. 3rd and 5 at the 30, A24 takes a handoff and runs around the left end. B73 grabs and pulls his face mask at either A's 28 or A's 35. A24 fumbles at that spot. The ball rolls to A's 37 where it's recovered by a grounded B62. Well, in the first example, that run ended behind the line of scrimmage, so we're going back to the previous spot to enforce that penalty. In the second example, we would tack that on to the end of the related run, which is A's 35, because that's the spot of the fumble. In the second example, 2nd and 12 at B's 48, A31 is running with the ball at the 40 when he fumbles. During A31's run, B61 holds A74. The fumble is recovered by A81 at B's 35. 81 runs down to the 32. In this case, the enforcement spot is going to be the 40. They can't tack this on to the dead ball spot. So their options here would be to enforce that penalty 10 yards from the end of the related run, which would take it down to B's 30, or decline the penalty, which is obviously not better. But it's important to note there that we would take that penalty from the end of the run, not the end of that specific run segment, and not the end of the last, or the dead ball spot. Excuse me. Questions about that? Any of those things? That's the super basic stuff as it relates to the various play types. But let's talk about the 3-and-1 principle. The 3-and-1 principle only applies if the enforcement spot is not included in the statement of the penalty. We know there are tons of penalties in the book where the statement of the penalty includes where we enforce it from. But the 3-and-1 principle basically says if it's a foul by the opponent, it gets enforced in the basic spot. If it's a foul by the team in possession and it's beyond the basic spot, we go to the basic spot. But if it's a foul behind the basic spot by the team in possession, it's enforced from the spot of the foul, with obviously some exceptions. One of those exceptions is contact fouls by A behind the neutral zone. For any of the following fouls, if the offensive team commits them behind the neutral zone, the penalty is enforced at the previous spot. We're talking about anything that has to do with illegal use of hands, holding, an illegal block, or personal fouls. Any of those occur that occur behind the neutral zone, we enforce at the previous spot. The other types of fouls, like illegal batting and kicking, intentional grounding, etc. Those are enforced from the spot of the foul. Note that if any of these fouls occur in A's end zone, the penalty is a safety. So that's kind of the exception to this exception, is that if the foul is one of these 4 categories of fouls, but it occurs in A's end zone, then the result of the enforcement of the penalty is going to be a safety. Here are some examples. 3rd and 10 at the 4, A1's pass is completed to A81, who's tagged over the 20. Prior to the pass, A71 is flagged for holding at the 2 or in A's end zone. Well, we flagged at the 2, that still has previous spot enforcement. So we're going to go from the 4 back to the 2. It's still going to be 3rd down, it'll be 3rd and 12. However, in the second example, since the foul occurred in the end zone, it's going to be a safety as a result of enforcement. 2nd and 5 at B's 40, A1's pass to A81 is incomplete. Prior to the pass, we have a chop block at B's 43, which is 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. In that case, again, it's a contact foul. It's enforced from the previous spot. We're going to go back to A's 45. Any questions about any of the stuff I've talked about so far? Okay. So let's talk about post-scrimmage kick fouls. A foul meets the post-scrimmage kick, foul meets the post-scrimmage kick foul criteria, provided all the following statements are true. The foul occurs during a scrimmage kick. The kick is not a try, a successful field goal, or in an extra period. The ball crosses the neutral zone, and Team B will next put the ball in play. If we happen to be missing any of those conditions, any one of them, the penalty has to be enforced at the previous spot. So we can check 3 out of 4 off the list. If we can't check the 4th one off the list, the enforcement spot is the previous spot. Here are some examples for PSK fouls. 4th and 12 at the 40, while the A1's punt is in the air, B6 holds A3 at either the B's 35 or B's 15. The kick is fair caught at B's 25. In the first example, that foul has occurred beyond the end of the kick or the post-scrimmage kick spot, so we would enforce that 10-yard penalty from the end of the kick and go back to the 15-yard line. But in the second example, that foul occurs behind the spot or the end of the kick, so we would use the 3-and-1 principle and use the post-scrimmage kick spot as our basic enforcement spot and go half the distance to the goal from the spot of the foul. Second example, 4th and 7 at B's 49. While A1's punt is in the air, B65 blocks A15 in the back at the B's 20. The ball is muffed by B17 and recovered at B's 15 by either A, a grounded B6, or B, a grounded A14. Well, in the first example, we still have a post-scrimmage kick. We still have post-scrimmage kick enforcement applicable. The 15-yard line is our basic spot of enforcement because that's our PSK spot. Foul was beyond. We enforce that penalty from the spot of the foul. From the end of the kick. In the second example, A's recovery means that it's not a post-scrimmage kick foul. So the only enforcement option would be from the previous spot, which would result in a first down for A, but B's 15 is much better than B's 39, so we're going to have them decline that penalty. Any questions there?
Please not pro and please like that.
Okay.
Nick, real
Yes.
quick, this is Bobby. Go back to that play. B6 recovers it at the A14.
No, B6 recovers it at B's 15.
Okay. All right.
A14 was the other option of the number of the player that could have recovered the
Okay.
ball.
All right. I got confused by the A15, A14. All right. Got it.
Yep, sounds good. So let's talk about some of our other commonly called fouls. DPI happens with relative frequency. That's the only reason they pay those deep guys to work, I think. If the foul is fewer than 15 yards from previous spot, A is going to get the ball at the spot of the foul. Bill agrees with me, which I appreciate. If the foul is 15 or more yards in the previous spot, it's going to be A's ball 15 yards in the previous spot. So we're never going to go more than 15 yards on a DPI. But if the ball snapped between B's 17 and B's 2-yard line and the foul is beyond B's 2, A is going to get the ball at B's 2. I would note for hash mark purposes In this case, the 2-yard line counts as like enforcement from the previous spot. So if we snap the ball on the right hash and the foul occurred on the left side of the field, and it was in the end zone in this case, we'd go to the 2, but we'd still be on the right hash. If the ball is snapped on or inside B's 2-yard line, or on or inside B's 3-yard line, if it's a try, we're going to enforce the penalty half the distance to the goal. Sound good? So, as an example, B17 interferes with A16 in B's end zone. The ball was snapped from A, B's 30, B, B's 10, or C, B's 2. In A, it's a 15-yard penalty, so we're going to B's 15. In B, we're going from the 10 to the 2. In C, we're going to go half the distance. For kick, let's talk about kick-catch interference. For most KCI fouls, it's 15 yards from the spot of the foul. There are some exceptions to that. The first one is that if we have kick-catch interference on a free kick play against a player who has signaled for a fair catch behind the 25-yard line, we're going to go to the 25 and then enforce the 15-yard penalty. If we have a kick-catch interference foul that occurs behind the goal line, it's going to be a touchback, and we're going to go 15 yards. For fouls during or after a touchdown, field goal, or try, if it's fouled by the non-scoring team, if it's a personal foul or unsportsmanlike, we'll enforce that penalty on the try or on the kickoff. 5 and 10-yard penalties are declined by rule unless we have illegal touching and it makes enforcement possible. Again, I talked about DPI on tries inside the 3, on or inside the 3, we go half the distance. If we have a foul that occurs after a touchdown but before they're ready for play on the try, or we have a live ball foul enforced as a dead ball foul on the touchdown play, we can go on the try or the kickoff. If the field goal is successful, they can either cancel the score and enforce the previous spot, or for personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, they can keep the score and have that penalty enforced in the succeeding spot, whether that's in the succeeding spot in extra periods or on the kickoff. Again, LEDs and dead ball fouls following the field goal are enforced at the succeeding spot. Additionally, and I have not seen this occur yet, but if we have a penalty that places, or a series of penalties that would place either team's free kick line behind their own 5-yard line, those are going to be enforced at the next succeeding spot. So if we have a series of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that would push the kicking team back behind, on or behind their own 5, those kind of go in the bank, and we'd work those penalties out after the kick return. Has anybody ever seen that happen or been involved in a game where that's happened? I suppose not. All right. Loss of down fouls by A. There's your list. Not going to read all of them to you. Just remember that new for 2021, the team who is offended may elect to extend the period for loss of down fouls. I suspect this could come up on change of possession plays if it was a 4th down play at the end of a half, or potentially if we had a loss of down foul at the end of the quarter and they're going to kick into the wind versus with the wind coming up. So that's one of the very few rule changes for this year. Our automatic first down fouls by B, PI, any personal foul, any unsportsmanlike conduct foul, and any kind of illegal contact with an eligible receiver during a down in which a legal forward pass crosses a neutral zone. So that 10-yard defensive hold could carry an automatic first down if it was against an eligible receiver and a legal forward pass crosses a neutral zone. Any questions about any of the things I've talked about so far? So let's shift to fouls on tries and in extra periods. If they occur before a change of possession and it's a foul by A, we're going to enforce it as we would any other play with a replay of the down. If it's a loss of down foul, the try fails. There's no carryover enforcement after a loss of down on a try. If the foul is by B, again, we'd enforce it like we would in any other play. Personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls can be enforced on the try, kickoff, or succeeding spot, depending upon the situation. But again, obviously, they'd have to score on these examples. So I'm going to take a brief vocal break here. Steve, why don't you read the question and give us the answer to this first question we've got here?
Okay, during a try from B3, A7 runs to the B2, retreats to B7 and throws a pass to A88, who catches the ball in B's end zone. Okay, so you have a even though he goes past the line of scrimmage, comes back, it's still an illegal forward pass, loss of down foul. You know, you're gonna on this here, we're gonna go with the green option for a legal forward pass. The try fails, and it's gonna be ace kick from the 35.
That's correct. So the loss of down provision is the only part of that that matters. We don't enforce the 5-yard penalty. They don't tack it on. There's no retry. It's a simple failed try, and we'll move to the next play with a regular free kick. Thanks, Steve.
Correct. You're welcome.
Bill, you got 2.
During a try from the B3, A22 takes the handoff and runs through the B gap on the right side of the formation, crosses B's goal line. A74 is flagged for offensive holding at B's 1. So the result of the play is the try is good. The foul occurs behind the end of the run. So we're enforcing from the B1. We're going from the try at the 11. Untimed 25-second clock.
Thanks, Bill. That's correct. This is a 3-and-1 foul. Beyond it's a run, the run end beyond the line of scrimmage. So we're going to go from the goal. It's the run end at the goal line. The foul was behind that. We'll go from the spot. Paul, question 3.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
All right, so it's during a try from B's 3, B9 intercepts A7 pass and returns it to B15, where he is tackled. B79 was flagged for defensive offsides. That's defensive offsides, right?
Yep.
At the snap. So we're going to accept it. Well, team A is going to want to accept it. So they could do a retry from B's 1.5. It's going to be the one in the yellow.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. That's
no
a foul
problem.
Foul before the change of possession. So if that's accepted, we'd enforce it as normal.
Yep.
Bob,
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bob, number 4.
During a try from B's 3, A22 runs the ball into B's end zone. During his run, B92 grabs and twists A22's face mask. Well, the try is successful. I think they have to decline the face mask and free kick at the A35.
So remember, because it's a personal foul and it occurred prior to the change, we can tack that on. So we're going to be able to try successful, and they get the free kick at the 50-yard line.
Yep.
Any questions about any of these plays? All right. So let's go back to talk about these situations after a change of possession. If B doesn't get the ball with clean hands, A retains possession of the ball. If A fouled before or after B's possession, we're going to offset those fouls at the previous spot. If A didn't foul, then they'll accept the penalty for B's foul and we'll have enforcement at either the previous spot or the end of the related run, depending upon the type of foul. If B did get the ball with clean hands, we will not repeat the down. Any foul by the scoring team negates the score, and the penalty is declined by rule unless it is either unsportsmanlike conduct or a flagrant personal foul. So just your run-of-the-mill face mask or something like that, block below the waist, those will go away still. We need something that we would raise the level of an ejection, or potentially if it was a targeting foul for disqualification. If we have offsetting fouls, those fouls cancel at the succeeding spot unless one team committed a flagrant personal foul or unsportsmanlike conduct, in which case there is no score, but we would still enforce that penalty at the succeeding spot. Does that make sense? So we have like an offense, a hold by A prior to the change of possession, and then a block below the waist by B during the return. Those would cancel. But if we had a hold by A and a blindside block with targeting by B on the return, we would enforce the flagrant personal foul from the succeeding spot. Does that make sense? We'd enforce the targeting, the holding would kind of go away. We'd enforce the targeting. Mr. Gilbert, question number 5, if you don't mind.
I feel tons of pressure, and no, I don't mind. During a try from B's 3, A7 is intercepted by B6 in the end zone, or B's end zone, excuse me. He throws a pass to B7, who catches the ball at B's 1 and runs it into A's end zone. I would go with B's illegal forward pass results in a 1-point safety for A free kick at the A's 35.
So there's one important thing to note here is, and this is separate from the penalty enforcement component, but we can't have a 1-point safety by penalty based upon all the other penalty enforcement rules we just talked about. Because the only enforcement for this penalty would be the succeeding spot, since B got the ball with clean hands. And since it's a 5 or 10 yard penalty, it's just declined by rule. There's no score and we move on. Mr. Banks, number 6.
Oh, shoot, you called me in the gym. Hold on.
All right, if you're the gym, that's fine. I can come back to you.
No. First series, first period, 2nd and 10 at the B25. A7 pass is intercepted by B16 at the B5. During the return, B75 is flagged for blindside block at the B20. B16 fumbles the ball at the B30, and the fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the ball to the B5. So, so B got the ball with clean hands. So they're going to keep the ball. They're going to force a penalty from the related run, so which is the end of the fumble. I think that's 30.
Remember, this is an extra periods.
Oh, this extra periods. Okay, well then plays over.
So where's the next snap?
At the 25, A25.
That's correct. Because again, B got the ball with clean hands. Their foul for the blindside block is not a flagrant personal foul, so it's going to be declined by rule, and we're just going to go to the 25-yard line to start series. Thank you.
Nick.
Yes.
This is Steve. Quick question on this one here. If we, let's say the same question here, we have a blindside block with targeting on this here. The answer will be the same, but I'm wondering, what will we do with that targeting foul? Will the player be disqualified or will he be ejected? The question I guess I'm getting at, is there a difference between a targeting foul and regulation where he'd be DQ'd and stay on the sidelines? And in overtime, does a targeting raise to a flagrant personal foul and a ejection?
So couple of things with this, and this was actually in the latest replay training video that Dean posted. Because the player is removed from the game, it's a flagrant personal foul. Even though he's disqualified, not ejected, he can stay, but it is still a flagrant personal foul because we're sending him out of the game for his actions.
Okay.
So
We'd end up
going to the 40. We would enforce that penalty because we disqualified somebody, and we'd go.
Okay.
The green answer would be correct.
Okay, I was just I heard that the other night on a podcast, and it was the first time I've ever heard that, and I just wanted to make sure that there was a reference somewhere because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, he's still. I mean, it's a flagrant person. I don't think they changed the. I mean, I know they changed language between disqualification and ejection, but it's still flagrant, and that's still the intent. Is for us to is for this penalty to not go away, and for this guy to still be disqualified.
Okay, thanks. And that's only in overtime that it would that scenario would occur, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and on a try return as well.
Okay, yes. Thanks.
Yep. Brian, number 7.
I hope I'm the only Brian in here. First
Yep.
and 10.
Sorry.
Yeah, first series from first extra period. Second and 10 at B's 25. A7's pass is intercepted by B16 at B's 5. During the return, B75 is flagged for unsportsmanlike taunting at B's 20. B16 fumbles the ball at B's 30, and the fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the fumble to B's 5. Because this is one of our exceptions, or that flagrant or unsportsmanlike, this would be enforced. And so this one, since they got it with clean hands, goes on the succeeding spot. So the next series, it'll be the square, because I like to do things differently from other people. Square is green, B first and 10, A is 40.
Your referees are weird guys, man. That is correct. We have that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, so that will be enforced in the succeeding spot. We will carry that forward. Mr. Willis, question number 8, please.
All right. First series of first extra period. Second and 10 at B's 25. A has 5 players in the backfield at the snap. A7's pass is intercepted by B16 at B's 5. During the return, B75 is flagged for a UNS taunting at the B20. B16 fumbles the ball at the B30, and the fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the fumble to the B5. Let's see. So we got foul by A, intercepted by B, so clean hands. We're going to not enforce the 5 in the backfield, but we will enforce the UNS. No. Oh, you're getting me here. B75 is flagged for UNS taunting. They would fouls would cancel, and we would go back to B's first and 10, A25. Oh, is the UNS carried over?
Yes, we do carry over. Remember, we talked about a couple slides ago, we were talking about this. Foul by each team, as long as B's foul is after the change of possession, means that A will not get the ball back. But
right,
we would cancel. We cancel 5s, we'd cancel 10s. But if one team has a UNS or a flagrant personal foul, that's still going to be enforced.
That's right. Gotcha. Yep.
Okay. Any questions about these types of plays? All right, so let's shift a little bit to. Did you have some, Billy?
I forgot to mute it. Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about illegal touching of the kick and its impact on penalty enforcement. So when A illegally touches a kick, B can elect to take the ball at an illegal touching spot, but this option is canceled if there is an accepted live ball penalty for a live ball foul by either team or offsetting fouls. If A commits illegal touching of the kick in B's end zone, the spot of the violation is considered to be B's 20-yard line. And if B commits a PSK foul, in that case, the scrimmage kick spot is considered to be B's 20-yard line. One thing of note, fouls by A, which are to be enforced from the spot where the dead ball belongs to B, have to be enforced from the dead ball spot and not B's 20 if the penalty is accepted and the dead ball spot is not B's 20. So for example, and this will obviously come up in plays later, but if we touch the ball, we have a illegal touching spot in the end zone and the ball rolls to the 4-yard line and A was in an illegal formation, the only place to enforce that penalty is from the 4 to the 9 and not a touchback plus 5. Does that make sense? So for all of these plays, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Nick, can you explain that, break that down a little bit for me? Why is enforcement of 4 to 9?
So because the way the rule is written, if the penalty for A's foul is enforced from the spot where the dead ball belongs to B, which we know we can do on kick plays, we have to enforce it from the dead ball spot. And we don't give them a touchback unless the dead ball spot is also a touchback. So for example,
So-
if I just punt the ball to you and nobody touches it and it lands in your end zone, it's a touchback, and we can take my illegal formation from the 20 to the 25 because the dead ball spot results in a touchback. But if, like I described, we have an illegal touching in the end zone, but the ball didn't touch the ground in the end zone, and the ball then is either down at the 4, rolls to the 4, whatever, rolls out of bounds at the 4, that's the dead ball spot that B would have the option to take A's penalty from.
Okay, I got it now.
So in
Thank
that
you.
case, they'd obviously want to decline that penalty and take the touchback, because that's better than, if they want the ball, that's the better option.
Right.
So in all
Right.
these following.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. In all these following play scenarios, A1 illegally touches the kick, then B1 recovers the loose ball, then B1 fumbles, then A2 recovers B1's fumble. So if you think about it like a timeline, this is what your timeline looks like. We've got a kick with an illegal touch. B gets the ball, or excuse, there's a legal touch, the ball rolls. B recovers it, B1 recovers it, he runs and he fumbles, A2 recovers it, A2 runs, and then the play ends. So, and to make that easy for everybody, I'm going to leave that timeline on the screen.
Thank you.
It's not a problem. Some things of note here. Okay, yeah. So here we go. So if the foul is in this segment after the illegal touch, but prior to B1's recovery, if it's a personal foul by B during, excuse me, break this down with the table. It's been a while since I dug all the way into this presentation. So here you have results of the play. Here in this column, A2 scores a touchdown. In this column, A2 is stopped short of B's goal line. So we have a personal foul by B during the kick, and A2 scores a touchdown. A can keep the touchdown and have the penalty enforced on the try or kickoff if it's a personal foul. If A2 is stopped short of B's goal line, it's going to be A's ball because the penalty would otherwise fit into the post-scrimmage kick category, except that the ball belongs to A, so enforcement would be from the previous spot. If, however, it was a foul like holding or something, and A2 scores a touchdown, since non-personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties are declined by rule by the opponent of the scoring team, then there's no foul, and B gets the ball at the illegal touching spot. But if A2 does not score, A gets the ball because the penalty would be enforced at the previous spot because it would fall short of one of the 4 post-scrimmage kick foul categories. Does that make sense to everybody? So we can take personal fouls from the end of the run, from the succeeding spot, if A scores a touchdown. But if they don't score a touchdown, that's off the table. And the only enforcement option is the previous spot. If there's a personal foul by A during the kick, B can take the ball at the illegal touching spot, or A can they can give the ball back to A and enforce the penalty at the previous spot. And that's true whether A scores a touchdown or not. And if it's a holding by A during the kick, the same principles apply. They can either decline the penalty and take it at the illegal touch spot, or give the ball back to A and enforce the penalty at the previous spot. If the foul is in the segment during B1's run, and A scores a touchdown, and it's a personal foul by B during B1's run, again, the touchdown will stand because they can enforce that penalty on the try or the kickoff, thanks to 10.25A1. If A2 is stopped short of the goal line, it would be B's ball because either the illegal touching spot works out for A to give B the ball back, or we'd enforce the penalty using the 3-and-1 principle as a run play. If it's a hold by B during B1's run and A2 scores a touchdown, it's still going to be B's ball because either that penalty is declined by the penalty. A has an option here because the penalty is not automatically declined by rule since illegal touching makes enforcement possible, but it's not going to be a touchdown for A. Does that make sense to everybody? I do have the sheet with this information on it on the Google Drive, and I think it's on the website too. If the personal foul is by A, or if it's a defensive holding by A that occurs during B1's run, B keeps the ball. We just enforce the penalty from the end of B1's run. That's it. So wherever the spot of the fumble is, that's where we tack that penalty onto. If the foul occurs during A2's run, if it's a personal foul by B, touchdown plus enforcement from the succeeding spot or kickoff for A if they score a touchdown, if it's a B personal foul. If they're stopped short of the goal line, it's still A's ball because that penalty is enforced from the end of the related run. If it's a hold during A2's run, this is the part that really I think screws A under the rules. A2 scores a touchdown and there's a hold by B during A2's run. That penalty is declined by rule, which means there's no foul, which means B gets the ball at the illegal touching spot. But if A2 is for some reason tackled short of the goal line, A keeps the ball and they enforce the penalty from the end of the related run. And if there are A fouls during this segment, B is going to probably just flat decline the penalty and take the ball at the illegal touching spot. So all that makes sense. I recognize it's a little confusing and convoluted without plays to show, but I hope it makes sense. Big thing.
It makes no sense. That's why there's 12 different charts, but that's just, you did a great job making it make sense.
Thanks. Yeah, the part about A not getting to keep the ball there and if they score a touchdown is unfortunate, but that's the way the rules work. So let's talk about some of these plays. Stan, can you unmute yourself?
All right, here we go, Nick.
Go for it.
Let's see what we got. We're 4th and 5 on A's 40. Okay, A illegally touches the ball at B6. B7 recovers the loose ball at B's 10 and returns the ball to B's 20, where he fumbles. A6 recovers the fumble and runs to B's end zone. During the kick, B17 holds A8. B17 holds A5. Well, A6 recovers the fumble and is going to run, and during the kick, you have B holding. I think you're going to have you got to have an offset, right, Nick? If you got 2 fouls like that, or
well, there's only the one foul. The only foul is the hold.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw something else in there. So B17 holds. If B, let's see, A6 recovers and runs to the end zone. A can never keep the ball if they first touch unless they accept the penalty. So let's see, during B17 holds. Hell, Nick, I'm trying to look at your examples here, and it got me. I'm all goofed up. So if you didn't have, let's just look at it this way. A6 recovers a fumble and runs to B's end zone. If you stop there, B would get the ball at the spot of A's illegal touching.
So that is an option, but
yeah.
I would also point out here, as I said, that penalty would normally be declined by rule unless illegal touching of a kick makes enforcement possible, which in this case it does. So the end of the kick spot is the 10-yard line, and the hold occurred during the kick. I didn't really say where the hold occurred. That's on me. But we can,
right. So you're going to have the accepted penalty. A's going to accept the penalty and let B, and B's going to keep the ball.
B keeps the ball after enforcement from the 10 to the 5.
Which is half the distance, and that's a PSK enforcement, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Lee, can you take number 10?
Yep. 4th and 5 at the A40. A5 illegally touches the ball at the B6. B7 recovers the loose ball at B's 10 and returns the ball to B's 20 where he fumbles. A6 recovers the fumble and runs into B's end zone. During the click, B17 clips A5. All right. Oh, so this is a foul by B. So the touchdown is good, and we enforce the penalty on the try.
Try or kickoff, that's correct. It's personal foul. Personal foul by B, even though it occurred not when A was in possession of the ball. The enforcement of that penalty for personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conducts against an opponent of the scoring team can always be enforced on the try or on the kickoff. So thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. Dylan, number 11, please.
All right, 4th and 5 at A's 40. A5 illegally touches the ball at B6. B7 recovers a loose ball at B's 10 and returns the ball to B's 20 where he fumbles. A6 recovers a fumble and runs into B's end zone. During B7's run, A5 trips B5. I might need a little help on this one, guys.
Well, let's think about this, right? So we have a foul by A during B being in possession, right?
Yep.
During B's run. So where is enforcement of the penalty by an opponent of the team or the opponent of the team in possession during a run play?
The end of the related run.
End of the related run, which is where he fumbles at the 20. So that's our end of the related run. So all we're going to do is take that 15-yard penalty and go from the 20 to the 35. B keeps the ball. Make sense, Dylan?
Gotcha. Yep.
All right. Any questions about any of that stuff? Nope. All right. So let's talk about timing situations and fouls that relate to the clock. In the last 2 minutes of either half, if the clock is stopped to complete a penalty by a team ahead in the score or by either team in a tie game, the offended team has the option to start the clock on the snap if it would have otherwise started on the ready for play. Important to note that there is no option to start a clock that will start on the snap anyway on the ready for play. All right, so this only stops a running clock, a clock that would otherwise be running. It does not start a clock that would otherwise be stopped. Let's talk 10 seconds of traction. With the clock running in less than 1 minute in either half, any foul that prevents a snap, like a false start, encroachment, offside with contact, intentional grounding, incomplete illegal forward pass, illegal backward pass, or any other foul committed with the intent of stopping the clock or that has the effect of stopping the clock immediately, like an unnecessary dead ball, UNR, or unsportsmanlike conduct. In any of those cases, we have a situation where we could have a 10-second runoff if the penalty is accepted. If the penalty is declined, there's no runoff option, and you can accept the penalty and decline the runoff. It's worth noting here that since 1 minute is less than 2 minutes, I'm real good at that math I can do. The rules that pertain to fouls in the last 2 minutes also apply to fouls in the last minute if they don't fall into the 10 seconds subtraction category. So for example, if the team in the lead holds with 45 seconds remaining and the clock would have otherwise started on the ready for play, the trailing team can still elect to start the clock on the snap. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then,
go ahead, Brian.
like, kind of to get to that point, that's what I was kind of thinking in my head. Like, if it's just stopped for a first down and the foul, it would then restart. They would have that option still. The not like our 10-second runoff where it negates that because it stopped for the first down. This is all that 2 minute under 2 minute thing is always there.
Correct. That is correct, and a good point to remember. The non-foul situations that could trigger a runoff include an injury, a helmet off, or the replay runoff, which I'm not going to get deep into the replay runoff stuff today. That's a meeting. The replay stuff's a meeting for another time. But the basic gist there is that if a replay review results in the on-field ruling being reversed and the correct ruling would not have stopped the game clock, we'd reset the clock to the time the ball is declared dead and then subtract 10 seconds. That's the quick and dirty replay runoff. The other thing that is important, and this kind of was clarified in the latest Dean video as it relates to runoff situations. If you have multiple things that could result in a 10-second runoff, there is no 10-second runoff. That was to clarify and make it a lot easier. So if we have an injury and also intentional grounding, there's no runoff. Or a helmet off, and well, grounding is probably the easiest one to go with. Just remember, if we have multiple things that could trigger the runoff, there is no runoff. There's just only one of these things can trigger the runoff. So let's talk about the 10-second runoff. Miley, you there?
Yes, I am. Late day at the job putting a soccer goal together, but I'm here.
All right, you got 12.
All right, 3rd and 5 at B's 25, 45 seconds in the second quarter. A3 runs to B's 23, returns to B's 27. I can't see the rest of that, and throws.
Throws a pass to A88, who's standing in B's end zone.
Yep, and the ball is tipped. Sorry, screen keeps slipping. The ball is tipped into the air by B8 and lands incomplete with 32 seconds remaining.
So is or is this not a foul that is eligible for the runoff?
Not a foul. So blue.
Well, remember,
yeah,
we have an illegal forward pass here, right? Because we ran beyond the line and retreated behind the line and threw a forward pass that was incomplete. So that's an illegal forward pass. And since it's incomplete, it does trigger. There is a potential for the 10-second runoff if so chosen.
Oh, okay, 23. Yep, you're correct. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
But
Mr. Romano.
Complete, Nick, if that would have been a completed pass, we still would have had the illegal forward pass. But if it's completed, we don't have the 10-second runoff.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. Because because even though the pass is illegal, it didn't stop the clock as a result.
Correct.
Mr. Romano, welcome aboard. You've got number 13.
All right, thanks for having me. 3rd and 5 at B's 25, 45 seconds left in the second quarter. A3 runs to B's 23 where he is tackled with 38 seconds remaining. After the play, A75 knocks B91 to the ground. All right, so this falls into the category of a UNS that would stop the clock. So we do have a foul that is eligible for a 10-second runoff.
That is correct, because the play itself didn't stop the clock, right? We just ran for 2 yards, 4th and 3, get the spot, clock's continuing to run, but now we stop the clock for this foul as a result of this extra action. AJ, number 14.
3rd and 5 at B's 25, 45 seconds in the second quarter. A3 runs to the B19 where he's tackled with 36 seconds remaining. After the play, A75 knocks B91 to the ground. The difference here is A got a first down, so this is not eligible for a 10-second runoff.
That is correct. And as AJ said, that's our reasoning. We already stopped the clock. So this foul did not stop the clock. The clock was already stopped. All right, a couple of other unusual enforcement situations. Illegal wedge formation, 15 yards from the spot of the foul or the dead ball spot. If behind the spot of the foul, so basically if the return team can at least run the ball back to the spot of the foul, they're going to get stuck with a bigger loss. If we have an illegal scrimmage kick, this will cause the ball to become dead. That would include both the scrimmage kick from beyond the neutral zone or the return kick. 5-yard penalties in both cases, but the scrimmage kick beyond the neutral zone also carries a loss of down and is always enforced at the previous spot. And our clean hands principle. If the team in final possession hasn't fouled before gaining possession, they can decline their opponent's fouls and keep the ball, with the exception of personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls on touchdowns. Those can still have carryover enforcement. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to run through these. So in this example, 2nd and 6 at A's 40, A1's pass is intercepted by B7 at the 45, return for a touchdown. Prior to the interception, A65 holds B71 at A's 38, and during the return, B7 taunts A81 at A's 5. In this case, B is going to decline the hold and have the penalty enforced for the taunting. And it's going to be B's ball, 1st and 10 at ace 20. 2nd and 6 at ace 40. A1's pass intercepted by B7 at B's 45, return for a touchdown prior to the interception. Yes, ace 65 clips B71 at ace 38. In this case, since that clip is a personal foul, B can keep the touchdown and have the clipping enforced on the try or the kickoff. So that's the thing of note. The clean hands principle, they can still have enforcement of those penalties if there is a touchdown, if it's a personal foul or unsportsmanlike conduct. Let's talk briefly about mechanics of penalty enforcement. Wherever the calling official is, if you're the only flag down, give the prelim after the ball is dead. Multiple flags, get together, talk about it, then go to the referee. Make sure if it's a spot foul is important, make sure our flag's in the right spot. Again, if we have multiple flags for the same foul, make sure they're all in the same spot. Don't hesitate to pick them up and move them a yard if you have to. If it's obvious enforcement, give the referee the player's number. From a referee perspective, if it's an obvious enforcement, you don't need a prelim. Most of the time, we don't have a lot of prelims. Just go right to your announcement. If we do have a required option, give a prelim, get the option from the offended coach, move on with the game. If there's usually no need to confer with the center judge or umpire on a crew of 7 with enforcement, but you can do it real quick, like 10 from there, whatever, to keep us moving along. In crew of 8, the center judge or an umpire in crew of 7, primarily responsible for marking off the penalties. Make sure you know enough about the enforcement of penalties that you can do the penalty enforcement yourself without the referee being involved, because you're going to get help from your wings. If you're a line of scrimmage guy and you're with the chains, you're going to walk off with the center judge or the umpire if it's crew of 7. If you're the official opposite the chains, hold the enforcement spot until the center judge and the other wing have completed their enforcement, then walk off the penalty with the umpire last if it's a crew of 8, or by yourself if it's a crew of 7. Umpire in a crew of 8, walk off with the press box wing to ensure the enforcement's correct. Deep officials, I don't know, stay there, make sure the clock's doing the right thing, check the right enforcement, communicate with what's going on next. Don't hesitate to step up if there's something wrong and fix it. That's all I got. Just under an hour. Any penalty enforcement questions?
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
What did you say about hashes for DPI in the end zone when we're snapping from the 16 in?
We would basically treat that as enforcement from the previous spot to the 2-yard line.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
Foul on the left side, snap from the right side. If we're going to the 2, we'd go back to the right side.
Easiest way to remember that for DPI foul, if it's a spot foul, you're going to go to the previous hash doesn't matter. You're going to go to the spot where the foul occurred. So that's a good way to remember that.
Yep.
It's only on a spot foul that you're going to change hashes. Everything else will go previous spot.
Yep. Well, I appreciate everybody's participation this evening. I recognize that penalty enforcement is incredibly dry, which means it suits me quite well. The plan here for us the next 2 weeks is to start reviewing the CFO test. If we assume it comes out tomorrow, like the welcome email said today, I'd like to go through the first 50 questions together on the 7th, which is next Wednesday. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern. And then the last 50 questions on the 14th, because it's due on the 15th. My request for everybody that's going to participate in that call is to please come with an idea of what you think the answer is. Don't just, hang on to the call to get the answers for everybody because you didn't bother taking the test. I think this is a great way to keep us all engaged and keep us moving. So that's the plan for next week or next 2 weeks. And then we'll get back to our regular quiz reviews. And then I know we've got Amy Pistone's going to present on some kick play stuff. Got a couple more available dates in August. If somebody wants to do a presentation, I really would appreciate it to take us into the start of the season. And then I'd like for us to try to meet once the season starts every other week to just talk about some plays that happened that we could maybe share with each other to try to get better. So that's kind of the plan for the rest of the year leading into the season. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with people as we go forward. I hope you're getting something out of the group, and I appreciate you coming on tonight. So everybody enjoy the rest of your evenings and your week, And I hope to see you all back here next week to talk about the CFO test. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nick.
Much
Thanks,
appreciated.
everybody.
Great job.
Thanks, Medium.